Hi, today I'd like to talk about parallels between the Nephite society and our society today in America. In about 200 BC, uh, the Nephites had lived in the Americas around 400 years, and there was a migration of the people. They migrated out of their homeland, the land of Nephi, into a new land, the land of Zarahemla, where they ran onto other people that had been there for a while, but had also come out of Jerusalem several centuries before. Uh, so here we have a people who were kind of a blended mix of Nephites and also this other group. They called them Mulekites, and they formed this new society, and they entered into what was known as the reign of the judges. Uh, and think about the parallels already between that and America. We have this migration to America. We have this blended group of people, and then in 1776 we have a revolutionary war. After the Revolutionary War, we have a government then based on liberty, a constitutional republic, and the government in amongst the Nephites started out as a kingdom with King Benjamin and then his son Mosiah. At the end of Mosiah's life, there is a situation where his sons aren't around to take over the kingdom, and he said, "You know what? Let's stop having kings. Let's have a free society, a society where the people vote for the who is going to rule over them instead of there being a kingdom." And he goes over and he tells them how wicked kings can become and how they will take away their rights and freedoms. So during this time, the parallel with America is that we have this time of freedom during a period of peace where there are good rulers that rule over the people and establish this. You can call Benjamin or Mosiah, like the founding fathers of the Nephite society after their death. So during what they called the reign of the judges. So during this time, there's also a church founded by Alma, and that church was founded on revelation from God, and that church becomes the true church that is spread amongst the people during the reign of the judges. Likewise, during this period of peace after the Revolutionary War, Joseph Smith founds the restored church. So I want to talk a little bit and focus first on, before we come back to the timeline here, I want to talk a little bit about what they said was necessary for a free government. If we look at Mosiah chapter 29, this is the chapter where Mosiah lays out the case for why they don't want to have a king, why they want to have a government based on the voice of the people. And it's kind of like the Federalist Papers, I guess, of the Book of Mormon. And he says in chapter 29, verse 26, "Now it is not common that the voice of the people desireth anything contrary to that which is right, but it is common for the lesser part of the people to desire that which is not right. Therefore this ye shall observe and make it your law, to do your business by the voice of the people." Okay, great. So you vote. And, what a novel concept for 2,000 years ago. And he says, "And if the time comes that the voice of the people doth choose iniquity, then is the time that the judgments of God will come upon them. Yea, then is the time he will visit you with great destruction, even as he hitherto visited this land." Okay, so the first thing, in order for them to maintain their rights and freedoms as a people, is that they needed to follow God's laws and abstain from iniquity, that the majority of the people, that the voice of the people had to support good measures. Otherwise, there would be destruction come upon them. Later in that chapter, verse 30, he says, "And I command you to do these things in the fear of the Lord, and I command you to do these things that you may have no king, that if this people commit sins and iniquities, they shall be answered upon their own head." So that's really the second self-governing principle. Free societies can come about when the people in the society are willing to take upon themselves responsibility for their own actions. Even though Mosiah was willing to give them this freedom, that wouldn't have been sufficient for them to have a free society. Free societies can't be built on government action alone. They have to be built upon a people that are willing to be accountable for themselves and are good people. Otherwise, the government will very quickly turn back into tyranny. Continuing on in our timeline, I want to go into some of the things having to do with wars. So Alma founds his church, just like Joseph Smith founds the restored church, and the gospel is preached. And the first half of the book of Alma is all about the gospel being preached among the people and the difficulties they had doing this, and the dissensions and whatever, but the success that they also had, especially among the Lamanites. And then we get into the chapters with the wars. And if we look at what caused the wars among the Nephites, the Nephites had been, since the time they were given liberty, there were people among them who continually tried to destroy that liberty. It started with a man named Amlici, who was inspired by another man named Nehor. And Nehor basically wanted to make all their preaching popular. He wanted to not have the priests be selected by God, but be selected by the people, and, kind of like a popularity contest, rather than it be God telling them what to do. It's all just, whoever's the most popular on Facebook, that type of thing, which isn't me. So I have no fear of that. Amlici wanted to be a king, and he was voted down by the people, and then a war ensued. Later on, another group called the Zoramites also wanted to take over and destroy the freedom of the people, and they made a pact with the Lamanites, and they had wars that pursued because of that. And then comes Amalickiah. And Alma 43, this is actually right before Amalickiah comes on the scene. This is during the war with the Zoramites. It really talks about what constitutes a just war in God's eyes. Alma 43:45, it says, "Nevertheless, the Nephites were inspired by a better cause, for they were not fighting for monarchy or power, but they were fighting for their homes and their liberties, their wives and their children, and their all, yea, for their rights of worship and their church." And we see also Captain Moroni putting these very principles on the title of liberty that he hoists. And they were doing that which they felt was their duty, which they owed to their God. For the Lord had said unto them, and also unto their fathers, that inasmuch as ye are not guilty of the first offense, neither the second, ye shall not suffer yourselves to be slain by the hands of your enemies. And again, the Lord has said, that ye shall defend your families even unto bloodshed. Therefore, for this cause the Nephites contending with the Lamanites, to defend themselves and their families and their lands and their country and their rights and their religion. One other point I want to make is that it's all about defending your rights. Okay, that is what the Book of Mormon defines as a just reason to go to war. And it's also, you got to give your enemies a chance to turn around and repent. Like it says, if you're not guilty of like the first or second offense, then you can go take up your weapons. It's not just they attack you once and then you go immediately and attack them. That's not just in God's eyes, according to the Book of Mormon. One other thing that was important among them, that in this defensive strategy that they had, that they weren't to go take it to the Lamanites. We see various times in the Book of Mormon where they go out of their way to go attack the Lamanites, and they get beat, and they lose this power of God, that this support from God that they had. Mormon chapter 4, near the end of the Nephite civilization, talks about this, and here they went out and they attacked the Lamanites. They got beat, and it says, and it was because the armies of the Nephites went up unto the Lamanites, so they began to be smitten. For were it not for that, the Lamanites could have no power over them. But behold, the judgments of God will overtake the wicked, and it is by the wicked that the wicked are punished. For it is the wicked that stir up the hearts of the children of men unto bloodshed. So principles that the Book of Mormon teaches us in this parallel between America and the Nephites is that there are reasons to fight, like defense of liberty, defense of your rights, religion, your homes and family. And like when there's no other choice, they won't stop attacking you. But most wars are actually fought for the wrong reasons, not because of defense, but because of wanting to take control of other people. And when we fight for the wrong reasons, God is not there to help. Okay, when wars are fought for power or control, there are always negative consequences to the society that fights them. And those were seen here in this example by the Nephites. So we have our parallel with the wars with the dissenters. So we had all these dissenters that came, and the Nephites had to go to war with them. And usually what they would do is go stir up the Lamanites and bring the Lamanites in, kind of like a battering ram, to come attack the Nephites. And so this war was really, all these wars were really around freedom. They were around maintaining your rights and freedoms. Okay, so the parallel to America is we had a civil war, and that was between the North and the South. But what was the real cause of the war? It was around freedom for blacks at the time, and their ability to be thought of as normal members of society instead of slaves. And so that caused the rift in America. I want to talk a little bit about a few other things that we learn during these wars, these sort of civil wars with the dissenters and the Lamanites. This is in Alma 45. Alma 45 then is the start of the account of this big long war, this period of war between the Nephites and the Lamanites, led by a man named Amalickiah. And prior to this, there had been the war because of the Zoramites, and that had kind of broken up the church a little bit. And Helaman had gone out. He was now the high priest, and he started preaching to the people and establishing priests and teachers and putting them in place. And that really made a lot of people upset. It said, now it came to pass that after Helaman and his brethren, this is 45 verse 23, had appointed priests and teachers of the churches, that there arose dissensions among them, and they would not give heed to the words of Helaman and his brethren. But they grew proud, being lifted up in their hearts because of their exceedingly great riches. Therefore they grew rich in their own eyes, and they would not give heed to their words, to walk uprightly before God. And it came to pass that as many as would not hearken unto the words of Helaman and his brethren were gathered together against their brethren. So we have this situation where people, they like their riches, they don't like being told what to do, they're basically like, go away, religion, leave me alone, I want to do what I want to do. And they really took after this whole idea that was taught earlier by the man named Nehor, who taught that people should be popular. It doesn't matter what you do. And Korihor, another Antichrist figure, also taught these same ideas that you shouldn't be held down by the beliefs of your priests or whatever. You should use what's your own and all of that. And so these people got very upset, and they had this leader says the leader was of those who were wroth against their brethren was a large and a strong man, and his name was Amalickiah. And Amalickiah was desirous to be a king. And those people who were wroth were also desirous that he should be their king, and they were the greater part of them, the lower judges of the land, and they were seeking for power. And they had been led by the flatteries of Amalickiah, that if they would support him and establish him to be their king, that he would make them rulers over the people. So you had these lower judges that were really seeking for power, and these lower judges believe, like they just like ate up what Amalickiah was saying, that hey, I'll make you guys leaders over the people. And of course, Amalickiah, his main object was to just be the king and take it to the Christians and the Nephites. He wanted power and control. Okay, he convinced these lower level judges to support him. I don't know what that support involved, gave him money, whatever it is, that they would have in this new kingdom, they would be rulers over the people. Then the people rejected that, and this is when Captain Moroni puts up the title of liberty, and they fight against them. And Amalickiah flees to the Lamanites. And he goes to the Lamanites, and he basically wants to convince the Lamanites that it's their rightful place as rulers over the Nephites, and use the Nephites, or to use the Lamanites rather, as this battering ram to come back to the Nephites and take over and rule over the Nephites. Amalickiah also had his servants that helped him in this, and they ended up between Amalickiah and his servants. Amalickiah became king over the Lamanites. You'd think that would be enough, but no. Amalickiah wanted to take it to the Nephites. And so I want to just kind of show you how this whole pattern of Amalickiah and his lies and deceptions illustrates how Satan's kingdom works. Amalickiah would have been at the top. Okay, he wanted to subject the Nephites to his role as king. He wanted to destroy all opposition, especially that of the Christians. Okay, he had servants under him. He'd make them top dogs in his kingdom. I'm kind of supposing that this is the case. Maybe the Book of Mormon doesn't explicitly say this, but given what happened for other kings like King Noah, who he had his priests, his special people that he put up at the top that had no moral restrictions. He just let them do anything they want, preach all kinds of lies and idolatry to the people. I'm supposing it was something similar with the kind of the top tier leaders of Amalickiah. Underneath them, then there would be these what they called lower level judges that he promised would be rulers of the people. But then there was the Lamanites that he also promised that they would take their rightful place as rulers over the Nephites. And then the general public, that he was just basically the whole cause to begin with is, you don't want these restrictions that the priests and teachers are putting on you. You can be free. You can be free. And I want you to think, do you see any parallels with our society today? Okay. We have people that will promise anything in order to get their way and to receive and maintain power for themselves. You have people that they will promise high positions to. You have other people that they say, hey, you are going to be like high ranking in my kingdom, so to speak. And then people that they just use as battering rams. I think of, for example, Black Lives Matter. Who are the ones funding Black Lives Matter? And I have no problem with, wanting racial equality, but when you're burning up cars and shooting people, that's a problem. And you look at who funds that organization, and you will see that it's the George Soroses of the world, white, very, very rich men that definitely want power and control, and they're using black people who I don't think they really I don't think George Soros really cares about black people. He cares about himself. But he's using them to get his way because he's a committed Marxist and globalist. And what he wants to take down the American society. You go read his own words. He talks about that. And uh, he is a lot like Amalickiah. So I I put this together that just shows what Satan's kingdom really looks like. It talks about in the Pearl of Great Price, the great secret, that secret combinations, they had, and Master Mayhem, the keeper of the great secret. Well, I think that each level in, just like Amalickiah's kingdom, thinks that they're going to have it. Like they're going to get everything that they want, and that's like the great secret for them. But they're just deceived by the level above them because they're not going to get everything they want when this all happens. And the people above them are deceiving the one lower. So there are levels of deception, and each level doesn't really know what's going on up above them, and they view everybody below them as just their pawns. They're their pawns, and they'll get rid of them after they're done using them and getting their way. So Satan, in Satan's kingdom, you got Satan at the top. His goal is to destroy all people, bring them into captivity, take down Christ in God's plan. Just like Amalickiah wanted to take down the Christians, wanted to make himself king over the land. Okay, then you have the top level, like echelon of the cabal, the secret combinations that work directly for Satan, and they want to create some kind of ideal world for themselves with them at the top, and all others as their total slaves. No religion, like except Satan worship. Like these are really evil people. Down below them, the general cabal members create this ideal world with them in control, not realizing it's really the guys above them. After removing those below them that would oppose, they like human trafficking if it's not cabal members, and Christians are ridiculed and silenced or otherwise dealt with in some other way. I want you to think United Nations, top level, members, things like that. Those that are committed to a world government and are really the ones at the top pulling the strings. Okay, down below them are the cabal associates. This is like Black Lives Matter or any other number of organizations that believe that they're going to create some kind of ideal world, but it's okay to break a few eggs to get there. Like the ends justify the means, and Christians especially need to be defeated politically in whatever means necessary. And then there's like the general public that are just told, "Oh, hey, we're just going to create an ideal world." And those that oppose us, such as like conservative Christians, are unenlightened and need to be convinced. And it will take decisive action to get there. But we must comply to this because the consequences are just way too severe. For example, just look today. If you don't comply to what the CDC and the World Health Organization say, then you're going to kill grandma. I mean, basically, that's what they've convinced us, that we're going to spread the disease and we're going to kill somebody and it's going to be our fault. And so anything that they want, they need to take this decisive action to stop it. And so I'm just kind of giving you a flavor of kind of what I understand and what I see going on in the world. And take this to the Lord. I mean, I could be wrong on some of this, but I do believe that these secret combinations really do exist in our society. Moving back to our timeline, after the wars with the dissenters and the Lamanites, you move into the Book of Helaman. And what happens in the Book of Helaman is that's when the secret combinations start infiltrating society. So you have a situation where the bad guys were defeated militarily, and instead of trying to just come on straight, against the people, with the military, they infiltrate the society, and they start murdering. They like murder the chief judge, and they start trying to do everything covertly. Okay, so today in our days, I want you to think about who are the secret combinations that have infiltrated our society, uh, especially since the Civil War. And President Benson talked about these people, and he said that they were ahead of schedule, that the secret combinations were ahead of schedule, and that he had had this conversation. I don't remember who it was. So it was a Soviet uh, of some sort, and he was told that that they were ahead of schedule in infiltrating our society. But you know, go back, look at David Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, the formation of the Fed, the the different wars that have then spawned out of that, the generation of the League of Nations and then the United Nations, and the people who have been the heads of those organizations, who have been committed socialists, and look at other organizations that have then come about in our day, Black Lives Matter being one of these organizations. And so we have all this infiltration in society of these secret combinations. And in the Nephite society, the secret combinations worked to cause a bunch of wars among the people. And the wars then led to a lot of devastation, a lot of people being killed, and they would it talks about them going through causing waste to cities and things like that. Think about the wars that have been committed in our day, World War I, World War II. You might be able to say that those were justified wars, that we were defending or helping to defend our rights and our freedoms from like the Nazis, for example, in World War II. But look at some of the other wars we fought. Are they really just wars? Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, or were we out attacking those in those nations where we necessarily shouldn't have been? Why did we go into them? Usually because there was some event that caused us to go into those wars, like, for example, 9/11. And so you can judge for yourself whether or not we're fighting just wars, but I want you to look at the results of the wars, and are the wars actually being won? Are they being completed? And if they're not, why? And so that's just kind of an open-ended question I have for you to think about. So you have all these examples of starting with Amlici, going through Amalickiah, and then the secret combinations. And it's apparent through the Book of Mormon history that evil people will always be trying to take control of the government. It's relentless. And you have to be on your guard, otherwise they get themselves embedded into positions of power, and it's nearly impossible to remove them. And what the Book of Mormon also teaches us is that when a society gives themselves over to the secret combinations, there's almost no turning back. It will lead to destruction. This is evident in Helaman chapter 2. So after the secret combinations start, Mormon says, "And behold, in the end of this book ye shall see that this Gadianton, who was the leader of the Gadiant robbers of secret combination, did prove the overthrow, yea, almost the entire destruction of the people of Nephi. And I do not mean the end of the book of Helaman, but I mean at the end of the book of Nephi," meaning the Book of Mormon, basically, "from which I have taken all the account, which I have written." Moroni also laments, "And now I, Moroni, do not write the manner of their oaths and commendations, for it hath been made known unto me that they are had among all people." And he then talks about they're had among the Gentiles in our day. And they are had among the Lamanites, and they have caused the destruction of this people who I am now speaking, and also the destruction of the people of Nephi. So the Jaredites, that's where he was talking about there. And then the destruction of the people of Nephi. Okay, so secret combinations, we see them arise in America, and we see wars being caused by the secret combinations, and then prophets warning of destruction. If any of you have ever read well, of course you've read it. If you're a member of the church, you've read the Proclamation on the Family. But there's a warning in the Proclamation on the Family that I want to read. At the end of the proclamation, it says, "Further, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets." And the prophets have foretold calamities from almost the beginning of time, right? I mean, you look in the Bible, the prophets in the Old Testament prophesied of calamities in our day and destructions in our day. And Joseph Smith also prophesied of these things, and he talked about war and contention that was going to come upon our people. Doctrine and Covenants 87, he talks about the rebellion at South Carolina, and the time will come that war will be poured out upon all nations, beginning at this place, and talks about the southern states being divided against the northern states. So this is given in 1832, 30 years before the Civil War. And verse 6, "And thus with the sword and by bloodshed the inhabitants of the earth shall mourn, and with famine and plague and earthquake, and the thunder of heaven, and fierce and vivid lightning also shall the inhabitants of the earth be made to feel the wrath and indignation and the chasing hand of Almighty God, until the consumption decreed hath made a full end of all nations." Okay, that's pretty serious, that there's going to be major destructions happening in the world. And so Joseph Smith prophesied of this. And you also, I want you to notice that in the Book of Mormon, that it's never a single prophet, and it's not always just the president of the church that prophesies of these things to come. Samuel the Lamanite, for example, prophesied of the destruction of the Nephites. And who was Samuel the Lamanite? He was a nobody. He came from nowhere, and after he's gone, they say, we don't even know what happened to him when he left. Kind of like good riddance. And he was a Lamanite. And it talks about other prophets being killed, those people that were sent to warn. Who was Abinadi? He was a nobody. So God always sends nobodies to warn the people. Who was Jonah? He was a nobody to the Ninevites, right? But they actually listened to him. And I want you to notice the nobodies today, those on YouTube prophesying of these things to come, and they're all talking about destruction that's going to happen in America. Okay, so toward the end of the Nephite, well, actually, they were during this time they were building up, waiting for the appearance of Jesus Christ. And about 3 or 4 years before the appearance of Christ to the Nephite society, there was this total societal breakdown. That hasn't happened here yet, but that is one of the things that is being prophesied and has been prophesied by people in our day, that there will be a societal breakdown, and that will lead to a lot of death and destruction in America. And I want to read real quick what it says about that societal breakdown amongst the Nephites. This is 3 Nephi chapter 6. And they at this point had this big war with the Ghanaian robbers, and they were all coming out of it, and they were good, and they had peace in the land. But it came to pass, this is 3 Nephi 6, verse 10, it came to pass in the 29th year there began to be some disputings among the people, and some were lifted up unto pride and boastings unto their exceedingly great riches, and even unto great persecutions. And there were many merchants in the land, and also many lawyers and many officers. That's interesting. And the people began to be distinguished by ranks according to their riches and their chances for learning. And some were ignorant because of their poverty, and others did receive great learning because of their riches. And they were lifted up in pride. And it talks about that this inequality, verse 14, causes that the church is broken up in the land, all except for like a very few amongst the Lamanites that were of the true faith. And then after the church is broken up, then there's prophets that says there began to be men inspired from heaven and sent forth, standing among the people of the land, preaching and testifying boldly of the sins and iniquities. And people were exceedingly angry, and those who were angry were chiefly the chief judges and they who had been high priests and lawyers. That's really interesting. And they were that the lawyers were angry. All those who were lawyers were angry with those who testified of these things. And there was no lawyer or judge nor high priest that could have power to condemn anyone who did that. So what they did was they kind of secretly took these people and they put them to death. And when that was found out by the government, because they had just laws, at least at the time, that the government started then, condemning these people that were putting the prophets to death and judging them, and that caused them to like go into secret. Caused them, meaning these evil, the lawyers and stuff that were doing this, caused them to combine with each other, and they broke up the government of the land so that they did not have to be judged according to the laws. And I think we need to be careful today, because I think there's a lot of people that think, those, for example, that follow Q, that there's just going to be, we're going to take down the cabal, and the cabal, everything's going to be wonderful afterwards. Well, I don't know for sure if Q is good or bad or whatever. I have my own opinions on that, but it doesn't really matter, because what the pattern here is saying is that if these people are really being taken down, they're not going to put up with it very long. They're going to break up society, and that's so that they can be set free. And so I'm wary of that happening. And so I want to also just real quick talk about Christian persecution during this time. So this whole time through, the Christians off and on are being persecuted, and that it's almost like when the Book of Mormon talks about times when everything's good, that like the church then goes rotten. And like you can see, like, for example, things were good, and it was the high priest, like the high priest, they're of the church, that are then killing the Warners. And that's just really bizarre to me. But it's almost like there has to be persecution. Like, if there's not some kind of persecution, then the society grows fat and arrogant. And we saw that with originally with the people of Amalickiah. That happens during the book of Helaman, and then they want to kill those that listen to the warners, listen to Samuel the Lamanite, and there always seems to be persecution that happens to the true believers of Jesus Christ in order to keep them humble. And so back to our timeline, these two red things are things that have not happened yet in America, but everything else has happened. And if we just follow the parallel, we're right there. We're right there next to societal breakdown and Christ's then followed by Christ's appearance. And the Book of Mormon talks about Christ coming and living in the New Jerusalem, that the New Jerusalem is going to be built in the Americas, and eventually Christ will then also come and cleanse the world of the wickedness. And just like the Nephite society, after that happens, there will be a long period of peace when Christ will reign personally upon the earth, which is a day that I await with anxiousness. But I know that we have a lot to go through between now and then. And there's glorious days to come. There's wonderful days to come. But there's also some hard things that are going to happen. And we can see those things happening, starting to happen around us right now. But be not afraid. God is at the helm. We listen to General Conference, and to me, I hear that we need to prepare, and also that the Lord will support those that truly believe in him. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.